started. So, so we sent out a weekly dispatch, which basically lays out our agenda for today. In summary, last week, what we had talked about, what we wanted to continue on today was, again, the ongoing crisis of capitalism, and then the alignment of forces. And we always start off with what's going on with the Poor People's Campaign. The Poor People's Campaign, in conjunction with a number of these other forces that are out here, which I've made a brief list of. Detroit Will Breathe, Election Defenders, Frontline, the the People's Party, the WFP, which is in conjunction with Frontline, which is the political party that was formed up out of New York. And then we have these large forces what are aligned on the extreme right in conjunction with Trump, which are immediately what comes to memory here is we have the militia here in Michigan, which had attempted last week to kidnap and put on trial the governor, and which is in conjunction with the Michigan militia, and they have the 50,000 Trump campaign election observers who will go to the polls armed accordingly and attempt to intimidate the voters. So that's basically where we are. We have the Poor People's Campaign has an ongoing campaign that is going on, virtual, dealing with the election. And we see Reverend Barber was on Democracy Now! Last week, talking about the Republican debate, I put that in parentheses, and how the issue of poverty, the word, it's like it's never uttered. So this is one of the things that Reverend Barber was talking about. The fact that the campaign, the Democratic Party campaign, would have the opportunity to clearly energize the base of the party and the poor in the country, the 50 million unemployed in the country, if they addressed the needs of this sector of the population, which is housing, water, jobs, healthcare. But they are compromised and are incapable of dealing with it. Although Reverend Barber does speak favorably of the campaign in conjunction with the existing second option that we have, which is no health care, which is what exactly Trump is proposing to put forward, which is the elimination of the health care that exists now, which is the Affordable Care Act, which they want to go to Congress and abolish. So that's basically where we are. Welcome any input or feedback from anyone. If they want to add anything to this at this point, please do.
Michael, did we clarify who our Michigan our Michigan links to the Poor People's Campaign are? Is it General Baker Institute people or?
Yes, we have. There are links here in Michigan. Among them are the General Baker Institute. In conjunction, I'm glad that you mentioned this. We learned, we discussed yesterday, in conjunction with the Poor People's Campaign at Central Methodist Church on, I want to bring this out here in Detroit, on November the 4th, they will have a mass rally and march from a number of churches who have come forward in conjunction with Central Methodist, in conjunction with the Poor People's Campaign, to begin a series of actions given the probability that Trump will not leave. So this was brought forward yesterday. We discussed this in conjunction with these actions that are going on here with the election defenders and these other groupings that are organizing. So, okay.
Just a sec. Sorry, I couldn't quite hear you.
Phone. Okay, so regarding the topic that we have been discussing over the last few weeks, is this what the nature of the crisis of capitalism. And one of the things that we have brought forward, and one of the things that I want to clarify and get people to come to grips with, is that the crisis of capitalism is not only something that we're experiencing, it's a global problem. And I would call attention to something that was posted on Marxist Glossary about 6 months ago, which I downloaded, which is a portion of a pamphlet that was written entitled Entering an Epoch of Social Revolution. And it's one brief paragraph that I would like to read. Qualitatively, new means of production are in deepening antagonism with private capitalist ownership of socially necessary means of subsistence. Permanent structural unemployment is pervasive and growing. Increasing number of proletarians cannot sell their only commodity, labor power. Production with high technology is forcing industrial production, i.e. human labor coupled with electromechanics, off the market. The economy based on buying and selling of labor power is being irreversibly destroyed. The destruction of the economy will force society to reorganize. This reorganization will change the form of ownership of socially necessary property from private to public. Only then will the economy, only then will the economy conform to the productive capacity of robots and computers. So that's the nature of the crisis. And this is something that we are now experiencing in conjunction with this election. As we discussed, the needs of the population cannot and will not be met given the current crisis of capitalism. There are no reforms that will be or can be won. And this is a situation that we are faced with. And the formations that we see arising out here, Detroit Will Breathe, Election Defenders, Frontline, the new political parties, the People's Party, the WFP, all of these groupings are coming forward to address in one form or another the crisis. And these are the alignment of forces that need an understanding of where do we want to go in the country? What's the vision? And the vision only comes from the conscious element that is us. These things do not come from the air. They don't come from the television. The vision comes from an understanding of the crisis. So I throw it up for input, please.
If I could chime in, absolutely
Please do.
agree. And thank you for having me here. My name's Todd. I think John invited us, well, Nick Brana. I'm from Movement for a People's Party. So I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, down the road from you, but I'm a labor organizer by trade. So that's
Welcome.
exactly what we're trying to do. So agree wholeheartedly. It's got to come from individuals and people weighing into that conversation as a movement.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry. Todd, what's happening in Ohio?
Apart from me living there,
Yes.
for MPP or how do you mean in what respect?
For NBP, for the movement building.
Well, we had quite a large hub in Cleveland a couple of years ago. Everybody kind of went to work back for the campaign, but now we're building all over the state. We've got activity basically Cleveland, Toledo, Columbus, working on Cincinnati, but we've got kind of Niles out in the middle of nowhere, and then Youngstown. But no, I mean, actually in Michigan too, we're doing the same, because right now we're in the process of building our hubs on the ground to be more permanent. We had them about 2 years ago in various places, California, Colorado, Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and some other scattered places. And we're trying to build in all 50 states right now to basically, get that apparatus on the ground. Because our goal is to get ballot access and register the party by next year. So yeah, we've got a team working in Michigan. We've got a couple people in Detroit, a bunch in Kalamazoo, Lansing, Ann Arbor, and we had a guy up in, we had a guy in Lansing, Flint and Ann Arbor, and we're trying to get him back. He's a labor organizer, but he just started another job, so we understand.
You,
I typed in stack on the chat.
Okay, Luke, thank you. Go ahead, Luke.
Oh, do you see it? Did it
Yes,
appear?
thank you. And then I got Renee.
Okay. John and Wally, you remember in the early 60s,
Carol, okay.
much of our reading was on revolutionary struggles around the globe. I mean, we had a very focus on internationalism. You spoke up in terms of maybe the future direction of the economy. And I think that we should look at the Chinese economy. I mean, they have over the past decades or so, they have industrialized, they have increased technology to a great extent in the US. With G5, I mean, their rapid transit system, you go over to China, it's almost like you're moving beyond America. And so how have they integrated, like private ownership and state ownership in such a dynamic economy? So what does that portend for applying what they're doing, their vision, and using, like something concrete and maybe some of the things that are realistic in terms of the direction that we should try to push society in terms of how it deals with these economic and social problems. And again, as you mentioned, in terms of the desperate situation in America, we have to fight for water, clean water. We have to fight for clean air. We're not even talking about food and shelter and all of those other kinds of things. So when you get to the nitty gritty in terms of you have to fight for just some to breathe for clean and drink water, that shows you basically the desperation for a large section of our society.
Renee. Then Wiley.
Yeah, Michael, that last paragraph that you were reading was about the role of computers and robots, and I know that there's this general feeling that with the robots, there's no place for human beings to be working because the robots have taken over everything. I'm not sure if that's the line of the league. I've heard you talk about that. But then following up what Luke just said in terms of China, they have the robots also. They also have, computers. And somehow, I agree with Luke, somehow they're able to merge those. I don't know what the unemployment rate in China is, but I think there must be a way to merge those so that there is not that, so that the robots do not take over from human beings. And what's interesting also is we have not heard, in terms of the consciousness of people and the labor movement, we haven't heard the word automation in a long time. So I'm not sure what that means in terms of employment, in terms of the new technology, in terms of computers and robots. Those are just questions that I have. But I think the fact that somehow China's able to deal with those questions, that is very, very interesting.
Okay, I got Daryl and then Wiley. Hang on, Wiley. Daryl.
Okay, yeah, no, I had originally called Mike and talked about this particular class and the crisis of capitalism, because I'm struggling to pull together a presentation for the Saturday Free School. And I want to kind of outline just in 60 seconds my line of thinking in terms of a different type of approach. I agree with what Mike says. He's outlining a crisis that comes from qualitatively new means of production. Marx talked about in the sense of social revolution. I want to look at this crisis that's taking place today around that expresses itself as this new financial regime. I even don't know what to call it yet. I guess what I'm hitting at is that the young people today are faced with a different kind of debt economy, right? Where the whole of society has been reorganized around finance in a way a whole lot different from when I grew up. So I'm struggling to develop a presentation that can talk about financial crisis a little different. We used to talk about it in the sense of overproduction crisis. Today we talk about a permanent glut due to robotics and stuff. But I think what people are facing is this new financial debt system where you go to the liquor store and you can pay your bill. I'm trying to describe a new financial architecture that exists right now that I want to try to speak to, but I'm not astute enough yet. So I guess that's kind of why I plugged in. I'm looking for some answers and stuff. And I've been reading a couple of authors that I can talk about later on that's been kind of guiding me down this path of explaining this new speculative regime of debt and stuff like that.
Okay.
That's how I'm trying to proceed with it.
Okay, okay, go ahead, Wiley.
Yeah, I think the discussion taking forth is a very important one, but the issue, the way I want to approach it is that the issue that from what Mike read, we have to delve a little deeper into what we mean when we talk about robotics and computers, particularly in light of developments over the past 10 to 15 years. The issue is really, more importantly, the application, what is called artificial intelligence, machine learning, data mining, information processing. And the impact of these kind of things as relates to the production process is basically two. One, the input of so-called intelligence into that process, that is decision-making and alternative selection. And secondly, there are three things really. Secondly, speed, that is the speed at which production processes can take place. And with that speed, the ability to apply that process over space and time almost instantaneously, like, virtual supply lines, or like what we're doing here, where the fact that something like Zoom eliminates the coercion of space and time in terms of communication. Supply chain, almost what they call just-in-time supply chain processing, where the entire process of production is freed, and therefore the mobility of capital is freed from space-time constraints. That's what we have to pay attention to, in my view over the past. That's where the tremendous development has taken place over the past, say, 10 or 15 years. The third thing is the whole question of the ability to store and process data. That is, data meaning the activity of the productive process and the human process along with it. And we can see this clearly in things like the Facebook, the whole social media thing, as well as what they call cloud. That is, there's just so much you can do now with things like smartphones. You have access to everything. I think given that, the other thing that we have to look at is not only the question of the impact on the labor market, that is the ability of people to sell the only thing they have, their labor power, but also the kind of contradictions that this poses for the ruling class itself, i.e. how that influences, and I think in Wasteland with his question is tapping into some of this, is how do you deal with this enormous explosion of highly mobile capital that has no way of expressing itself within a productive process from which surplus value is extracted. And so in the absence of effective means of application through the process of producing surplus value, which we know the only source of surplus value is human labor, that's what it is, you're left with something like speculation. That is, finding places in which you can get a return on your accumulated capital. Because we also know that if you don't keep capital moving and changing form, it dies. It doesn't exist anymore. So my point is that while we look at the impact on the working class, we have to also pay particular attention to the kind of contradictions this is posing for the ruling class itself. And I'll just give one example that I think has been resonating with me, is that the ruling class is so desperate for profit in this country that they've essentially privatized the response to the pandemic for the purposes of profit. And they're willing to sacrifice lives to that extent. And it should be seen, I think, from the standpoint of this is what capital and the crisis capitalism imposes upon them at this point in time in order to extract profit. So I know that that's sort of a wide-ranging thing, but I'm just raising that because I think that we need to approach it, also from that standpoint, namely what this present situation poses for the capitalists in their struggle to maintain their class rule.
Okay, thank you. I got Jim B. and I got Dave. And we should look at Hetty's posted comment. And I don't know whether people are paying attention to the
Could you
to the
read
chat.
that for me?
I can do that for you, Wiley. This is Hetty's comment on Mark, as always. China's official unemployment rate rose to 6% in April from 5.9 in March, according to figures released Friday by the National Bureau of Statistics. That's the impact of COVID-19. 2019, excuse me, this is the impact of COVID. The current unemployment is 6%. In the year 2019, it was 3.6.
Wow.
So they relate this to the crisis of the pandemic. Okay, I'm going to call on Jim, then Dave.
Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome.
Yeah, this is Jim B. I'm no theoretician, so I'm busy listening to those of you who are and trying to figure out how I apply that theory and practice in my community, where all of the young folks, not all, but many of them are working at gig jobs, making virtually nothing. And they're at-will employees, even in the production process of the big three. They get hired through these temp agencies, and they're at-will employees. I just wanted to make that comment. I'm trying to figure out how to apply this at a practical level where I live.
Very good.
Thank you. Okay, Dave.
Yes, I think it's clear, and I think we agree that the new mode of production is antagonistic to the capitalist system of buying and selling labor power, of the private ownership of the means of production, and for us selling our labor power. So I think we could look at it from another angle, and that is it's liberating for us. It's liberating for us. We won't have to sell our labor power anymore. We won't have to work a day job. We won't have to be a wage slave. We won't have to toil for a living. It's the dream of mankind not to have to toil for a living. And I think we need to look at the flip side of that as well. It's also liberating for the former colonies and neo-colonies, because they are able to now leapfrog into development, as we see China is doing. It was the poorest country in the world, as other countries are intending to do. And we see with the reaction, Venezuela, all these independent countries, some of which have a communist party in power, some are just nationalist governments. And we see what the reaction of the capitalist state is. The capitalist state is to, wage economic warfare on these countries, wage hybrid warfare on these countries, and we know what's coming down here because they don't want us to be liberated. But I think we have to try to look at it in a positive sense that this process is going to liberate us. So we just have to not just look at it, what it's doing to them. We need to know that, but we need to know that we're going to be freed as a result of this new mode of production. And what do we do? What's our strategy? How do we fight for our freedom? Thank you.
Okay, I've got, I will hold off my comment. I'll go to Hetty, then Nick.
I only commented on, tried to use humankind instead of mankind, that's all.
Okay, thank you. Okay, okay, thank you, Hetty. Okay, Nick, go ahead.
Hi. So I think based off of what you had read, I agree that we are sort of like in a big moment right now of cultural shift, and we can sort of like feel it in our bones and in our bodies and like all over our neighborhoods and around the world. We can feel the cultural shift. It's like we're in the middle of it. People are like hungry for something different. My question is, and ready, I think people are ready for that. My question that I keep thinking about is like, who is providing that vision for something different? And are we providing that vision? Because if we are, I don't see it. And I don't think many people see it. And are we coordinated enough to have a vision that really is revolutionary and really like that people can buy into? And are we ready to provide that for people? Are we ready to govern within that? And I don't know if we are. That's some of the things that I'm thinking about right now. In terms of China, I think that China is very much a capitalistic country. I think it is an authoritarian capitalistic country. The reason that they're able to do so much is because the state power is so huge and so powerful. And I do think that there are a lot of things that China is doing well. I'm not completely like dissing on China. I think there are a lot of things that China is doing well that everyone can learn from. I do also think that people can't even speak badly about the government in China. They'll get thrown in jail. And so there's still China is not necessarily the model for us, in my perspective, to completely be looking at, although I do think that there are definitely things happening there that are going well.
Okay, I got Dave, then Todd, then I'm going to call on myself. Okay, Dave, then Todd.
Add one thing. The end of wage slavery doesn't mean the end of work. There's lots of work to do. Bridges to be built, there's parks to be constructed, there's to take care of, there's innovation and invention and exploration. But it doesn't have to be governed by a regime of wage slavery. In fact, wage slavery is holding all of that back, and we know that. Just wanted to make that point.
Right. Todd.
Yeah, I agree with everything that was said. I just wanted to come with Nick. That's what we're trying to build right now, is that infrastructure to do it. And what we found, at least, is you got to get rid of the labels somewhat, because look, people are especially right now, essentially the country identifies as center right when in reality we're not. So there's a lot of and it's just that basic movement building. We've had a lot of success talking to people about the issues, and labor's going to have to take it on, but labor's not going to do it right away. The people with inside labor are going to have to move them. All these big institutions aren't going to do it right away, but the people inside them are going to have to move them. And yeah, I don't know how successful we're going to be, but hopefully we are, and we'll see in a couple of years, but yeah, that's what we're trying to do.
Right. So one of the things that I wanted to bring forward, we had some discussion yesterday. I had another meeting yesterday, and one of the things that was brought forward concerning the technology, the history of where we live, okay, right here in Detroit. We talked about the Ford Rouge plant. Ford Rouge, okay? After the Second World War, the Ford Rouge plant employed over 100,000 people. By the 1980s, today, we have a comrade's son works at Ford. There are 4,500 people that work there. They build today, the figure that she gave yesterday was an astounding hourly rate of production was like, they build, 60 cars, 70 cars, 80 cars with 5,000 people. So between the amount of humans that were required to build that number of cars 40 years ago, 50 years ago to today is markedly less. We know for a fact that there are auto production facilities in Europe which have a minimum of human beings working there, less than 100. The factories are almost all completely automated. So, and as was brought forward, the impact of the information technology that what Wiley was talking about, the just-in-time production, the gig economy, this is what is arising. It is not production based with human beings. It is production based upon this new technology. So the impact is profound. And the introduction of new ideas, how this is done, Todd, is fundamental to this time. You know, I mean, if you listen to Trump, he's calling the Democratic Party socialist, okay? Because his interpretation is that this is a negative connotation amongst, and if you look at the Bernie Sanders campaign, that is a fallacy. That is a fallacy. Amongst his base, this is red meat, okay? Red meat for the 20% of the electorate that worship him. But, you know, it's not a fact. It's not a fact. Okay. Go ahead, Wiley.
Yeah, segueing on what you said, Mike, I want to speak directly to Jim B's point because you just spoke to it, that this mode of production is changing the character of labor. Think back at terms of Rouge. Think back when we were young people. When I was a young man, I could figure out, I had choices. I could go to college, practically free with all the grants. I could get a job in the plant and work 29, 30 years and get a full-time retirement with full benefits. And, you know, I had no idea that if I went into the Buick, I'm from Flint, and I got my 89 days in, I could figure on having a job for life if I wanted to. And if I did decide I was pissed off and didn't want to work in the plant anymore, many of us did this, we left, go to school after the shift and become a teacher or whatever. Those days are gone. I mean, this generation cannot think of a full-time job. My son, who has a degree in IT, you know, has had about 5 or 6 different jobs in the last 4 or 5 years. Most of them have been short-term 6-month contracts. Now he makes good money on that contract, but he has no benefits, he has no job security, and he's got to be on the lookout for, you know, where the next opportunities will come, and he's got to move to where that opportunity is. This is the nature. It's not necessarily the disappearance of work. It's work on a more intensely exploitative level. You know, and this is one of the lessons from capital, to understand that the application of this modern technology not only means the loss of labor, but it also—
Where did it just go? Hold on.
I beg your pardon? Oh. It means the more intense exploitation of the labor power still at work. Look at the case in Amazon, for example. These people are working like dogs at Amazon. I mean, young people, and 19 to 20,000 now them are stricken with positive COVID. The essential workers on the front line, those people in those for-profit hospitals providing a COVID treatment are working at damn near minimum wages at 12, 14, 15 hours per shift. That's capitalist exploitation at an extreme level. That's one of the byproducts of the system. On the one hand, very insecure employment and underemployment, and on the other hand, permanent employment for an increasing majority of the working population. On the question of China, real quick, China is a clear expression of what we're talking about here because of the application of this technology to a largely formerly peasant and underdeveloped country. And over the next several years, in my estimation, we're going to see the full impact of this technology we're talking about, specifically in China.
Okay, I got John, and then Nick, and then Daryl.
Okay, all I want to say is this. On this call, we have a lot of the intelligentsia, that's where we are. But the question becomes, how do we break this down to the constituents? And right now, see like for instance, when we get on, we get away from certain things. Now, remember, and I'm talking about where we are in our understanding, is basically detrimental to the ruling class. And this kidnap, these people who were arrested, the militia here in Michigan, this may be also around the country. And the question becomes, what are we going to do about that? I know that when we talk about the question of speculative capital, which is most of this country is in debt and credit around the world. And we put some articles out that talked about borrowing into fascism. So the question becomes, how are we, like I'm glad Nick is on, and some of the other groups, how are we going to facilitate bringing the groups together in order to get out from under the quagmire that we're in? Like this idea, and the people that I work with, a lot of them are fearful of robots, but there's a difference. Now, I know the young man mentioned about China. China has a communist party, wherever it is, and we don't have that here. So what we're struggling to do is to try to gain control so that the tools that Dave spoke about will be able, that we won't have any of this poverty. But we have to get, there's a step, there's a stage to get to that. And right now, one of the primary stages is to foment some sort of people's party, because we're at the conditions, right? And there's nothing else. We're at the place right now that the People's Party needs to be done. And if we don't do that, because you see what's happening on the other side, these so-called constitutionalists trying to develop something, the fascist wing that is rising and developing. And we have to, with the understanding, and I'm just saying, the crisis of capitalism has put us here. It has put us in a situation, and we have to break this down. And I know the people that I relate to have to understand the bottom line, the basic problem is the crisis of the capitalist system. It no longer serves the ruling class, and it no longer serves us. So how do we get out of this quagmire? And I think right now we need to, I'd like to know, what do people see in terms of trying to build this People's Party, another step in the direction of moving towards a classless society? That's all.
Okay, I got Dave, and I'll call on Todd after Dave, and go Dave.
I just wanted to speak to Nick's issue of vision. What is the vision? I think every movement and every revolution has to have a vision. Like the French Revolution, liberty, equality, fraternity. The Russian Revolution, bread, land, and peace. We have to be fighting for something. And I think right now, within this capitalist system that we have, we're fighting for basic needs because capitalism isn't providing our basic needs. But we all know that this new means of production can provide everything for everybody. I mean, we know that. And your generation, Nick, knows that. I mean, they could 3D print a house. There's all kinds of things we could be doing, but we can't be doing them under this system. We're just fighting for basic needs. But if we had so I think the vision has to be that we want, and we said this at the social forum, another world is possible. And that's what we're fighting for, a world that's not, that satisfies our unique individuality as a person, allows us to blossom, this human capital that we are into what we really could be that we can't be now because we have to go get a job. I know they say people look backwards, it's hard to look forward, and people want to get those jobs back. They used to feed, clothe, and shelter their families. But we know, based upon this discussion, that isn't going to happen. So we have to have a new way of organizing our society, of organizing production, so that there goes my phone, does the same thing that Mike's phone did.
Right. The phone's
Alive. It's alive. So I wanted to say that, Nick, and I think that's a real important issue. Vision. We know that with this means of production, we can have everything we want. We can have world peace. We wouldn't have to be spending all this money on weapons, on police. People could have houses. There's just we could do it quickly. We wouldn't have to come from the poorest country in the world like China to where they've come from in 50 years. It would be even quicker than that. So I think people have to see that, yes, we have to fight for basic needs now so we can survive, but we have to have a vision of what's possible in the future.
All right, I got Daryl, and then I'm going to go to Todd. Go, Daryl.
Okay, sorry about that. Something Renee had just mentioned, when we're talking about, I'm working on the presentation, right? When we talk about automation and robotics, it's not a concept of people not working. The concept is that labor is not able to make enough money any longer where you can live a decent life. Robotics means that those people who are working, at least out here in San Jose, right? You no longer can make enough wages to live.
Right.
In the old period, you could make enough wages to live. Today, no matter how many people are employed, the value of labor has been cheapened to the point you cannot live off of the wages that you make. And I'm trying to set this thing up for young people who are working. They are experiencing something. What they are experiencing is a new debt economy. Now, yes, there's a lot of people outside of the process. I see them outside right now, sleeping in the car, for real. But then you have another mass that's working out here. And I guess I'm trying to dig into some information that deals with this new service economy. In the old period, we made commodities, real material commodities, automobile things. Today, the economy is so tilted towards services. The people out here provide services. They're not making they don't make a commodity as we knew it in the old days at Netflix. They simply don't. They don't make that at Apple that's around the corner. All the majors are out here, but they providing services in a different way. And I think that when we talk about a crisis, we have to start from that point of view, what it means to become a debt slave, right? And to just be utterly proletariat, pushed to the bottom. But I mean, that's just my little points and stuff. I'm trying to get together this way to present the issues concretely and differently than just a general,
Jim B?
Yeah.
Jim B? Unmute yourself. You're on mute, Jim. Jim, you're on mute.
Sorry about that.
Okay, go ahead.
That's what you call being a basket case with technology. Follow up on the vision. I think that's precisely what I'm trying to figure out. I think we have the vision, which has been articulated in a number of ways. But the real question, and I think Nick alluded to that, or somebody did anyway, how do we impart that vision for those of us, those around us, particularly the young folks who out here just, in the gig jobs? I think that's one of our tasks in trying to figure out how we are able to communicate our vision in a sense that folks say, yeah, that's my vision too. This is what I want to do. And how do I go about doing it? That's it.
Okay, Hetty. And then I got Dave.
Oh, I just wanted to be sensitive to Nick and your time. And if you did have to leave soon, if you wanted to give us some last words. So I'm giving it over to Nick, if you want to.
Thanks, Hetty. No, I don't have anything. I don't have anything else to say. I just really appreciate everyone's time and your really deep the philosophy and passion and vision as well for this new world. I'm totally in on it. I think that we need to really fight for it. I think that we need to give people a vision they can believe in, and that's what I'm working towards. And I'm so glad to meet you all today. I'll be leaving in about 5 minutes.
Okay, go Todd. Give us your input, Todd, on the People's Party. What do we need to do here? How do we get involved here in Detroit, for one thing?
How do we get involved here in Detroit? Reach out. I mean, the best way if you want to get involved locally is sign up. I can put the link in here. We're going to have another meeting soon, and we can get you connected with the Detroit area. But basically, if you sign up as a volunteer, then you'll be like right in the show and you'll get everything. And yeah, I'll put that in the chat here in a minute. But I was gonna say, look, we're building it, and I think the vision is not one to put on people. It's to get out of them, right? Because everybody's got their own different vision. That's one thing I've certainly learned being a labor organizer is you can't put your vision on somebody else. Say we're new union organizing, and I work with musicians, so it's a range of things. Say if you got a group that wants to be, they're part-time, they want to be professional, right? Okay, so, and that's one person's vision because that's what they do for a living. If you've got somebody who does it as a hobbyist or is married to somebody that's independently wealthy or whatever, that doesn't need that money, you're basically then telling them you want to put them out of a job, right? And so the same thing is kind of true here, maybe not on that direct level, but is to have these 5 or 6 step, depending on the school you learned in, organizing conversations with people to bring them around. And that's one of the things we're trying to do. That's and train people and get that going, rather than what I see, at least in political organizing today, is that's this kind of top down self-selecting thing. This is what we're for, this is what we're against, you're either with us or you're not, versus let's bring everybody in and decide as a group where we're going on the common issues and create this culture that yes, Michael, we might be fighting for your issues today, but we have enough commonality and know what's going on that you're going to turn around and fight for my issues as soon as your issues are taken care of. And I would say even at the start here, it's reaching out to people that aren't in the system and reaching out to people that, may need help organizing themselves with no pretense or discussion about joining, but instead working together to solve their immediate issues. I mean, whatever it is, it may be, they need to band together against their landlord from getting evicted. It may be, cleaning up a lot in the neighborhood, whatever it is. And, once people get a couple wins, they get really invested and want to reach out, and it becomes this kind of snowball effect rather than what the political parties have been doing in the past 40, at least my lifetime. So yeah, that's kind of our plan, is to go old school, radical CIO socialist turn of the 20th century organizing.
Okay, so I'd like to take the opportunity, 1 second, Wiley. User, are you here, user? User is not here.
I'm sorry, yes, I'm here. I was on mute, yeah.
Okay, user, would you please talk about what you discussed yesterday after the election, because you had some excellent ideas. It feeds into what Todd was saying, and many people are saying, what's going to happen November 4th, user? Please.
Okay. There's a widespread fear across the nation based off of things that we've heard on TV, social media, that the folks that are in the White House now have decided that they will determine whether or not the election is legitimate or not, and have raised a number of issues about that. So at the Central United Methodist Church, after several weeks of discussions, on the 4th of November, the day after the election, clergy, community groups, labor unions, all kind of folks are organizing a series of marches that will start on that day. So that'll be Wednesday. The name of this event so far is something like the peaceful transition of power demonstrations or marches or something along those lines, but those are the words. And effective on that day, starting at about noon, the gathering will start probably 10:30, 11 o'clock. People from the metropolitan Detroit area, and there are no boundaries, are going to gather at Central United Methodist Church to start a series of marches that will happen at noon every day, starting on the 4th, to make it clear that whatever it is that's going to happen next, it needs to be peaceful. Now, under that discussion, again, starting on that day, Welfare Rights has been encouraging people to try to take a look at another issue, and that is the beginning of a 4-year campaign. If we get rid of the spokesman fascists, if we get rid of number 45 and a Mrs. 45 and the rest of the 45s, we kick them all out. The American public is clear and very convinced that the Democrats are the party of working people. Well, okay, I'll go along with that. Let's get rid of that first group, put Democrats in office, in the head office, that's fine. Okay, and then effective November the 4th, we need to start talking about there's no need for anybody to be homeless. We can build houses, we can build cars, we can duplicate medicine, we can equal pay for equal work. We do all them things now because the society has moved to an objective reality that says automation and technology has freed everything and we can get all those things. So the day after the election, the 4th, we're gonna launch teams across the country. You too, Wasteland, you look so cute. We're gonna release teams. And the people that are working on housing, our suggestion is that in the next 90 days after November the 4th, every homeless veteran, we start with that group, find a place for every homeless veteran to move into and give them a key, put some food in that damn refrigerator and stove that should come with the apartment, and a key to their place. And that 90 days, it shouldn't be any, it doesn't need to be longer than that. Then the next 90 days, let's go find the men and women with children that are out on the streets, put them all up. You got 90 days to do it. And that's Mr. Biden, and that's Ms. Kamala, and whoever else. We don't have to discuss these things anymore because there's no need for that to exist. So those are the kinds of things we've been talking about, and certainly trying to give credence relative to let's relieve the masses. We are at that moment where the world can change. We got 4 years and we could get rid of this damn homelessness. We could get rid of this damn hunger. We could get rid of all of these things that have been holding us back, always because the technology was not available. This is now time for the $6 million man who got the technology. He can do anything. Well, we can do anything. And of course, the only thing that was lacking is that vision that we talked about. I can see very well. I got 20/20 vision, and I know the direction we need to go in. Mr. Chairman, I'll go back on mute.
Thank you very much, user. Okay, Wiley. Wiley, you're on mute. Wiley, unmute. Unmute, Wiley.
Okay. Am I
Okay.
muted?
Now you're
Okay.
not. Great.
All right. All right. Gee, I forgot. Well, I got my point. On two things, and I think these are very important points for discussion. And that is one question. I think it was Todd that raised, and I don't. If I'm mistaken in terms of name, please forgive me and correct me about this question of vision. That is, what's the source of the vision? I think that's a very fundamentally important question. the source. Where does it come from? Top down or bottom up? Does a vision arise spontaneously from the masses, or is it something that has to be injected into the movement? That's a fundamentally important thing. I'm not sure. I think it's a process of answering that question, but I'll put my position on it. And my position is that the vision comes from the requirements of the class struggle, that the requirements of visions arise objectively in the course of the class struggle. And, you know, like when we talked about, for example, in terms of the Russian Revolution, that vision regarding bread, peace, and land arose from the objective conditions of the class struggle itself within Russia at that time. So I think that in answer to that question, that's how that has to be, I think, approached. On the question of the election, as I think about the election and the aftermath, I can't help, in my mind, I always come back to the question at the start of the Civil War and the problem of secession, and what the South did with the election of Lincoln. They seceded. I mean, it came down. And, you know, a lot of what's going on now reminds me of the slaveholders' revolt in terms of sending signals what they're going to do. And it certainly represents a turning point in that sense. And I think, as I think about it like that, I always think about this, that this election represents a potential revolutionary turning point in terms of, you know, how on one part a certain section of the ruling class sees their objective position and what they need to do about it in a political sense. I don't think, for example, that the people around Trump are in any way, I mean, they're very serious about the possibility of some kind of coup d'etat kind of movement, and they're constantly trying to orchestrate that. And I see, for example, this situation that occurred in Michigan is perhaps a part of that. Before this meeting, we typically, Leah and I typically look at Meet the Press to try to get what's going on, at least in terms of mainstream media. And one thing stuck out for me in that, and that ties in the point that Maureen raised, that is the element of fear. And they put up a statistic, and I think I'm interpreting it correctly, on Meet the Press, where 79% of the American public is being motivated out of fear. And I'm not sure if that's the American public as a whole or the Democrats alone.
Democrats.
Or it was Democrats, okay. But that was a motivating thing, that what was motivating the majority of Democrats was a question of fear. I think you said for the Republican portion of optimism, right? Yeah, at 64%. So I think that's that many people are very concerned. And the question becomes is, my last point is, the one thing I think we have to look at very closely to the election is what has been and what is the response of the public relative to the vote. That is, you know, what the vote outcome. For example, if it's like a Reagan-like landslide where Biden takes everything, you know, how do we interpret that versus a very close contested kind of thing? So I think what I'm saying is, in sum, is that on the question of vision, I think we need to explore that very closely in terms of the point that was raised by Todd. And secondly, that in terms of the election, we have to pay very close attention to the nature of the popular response in terms of the vote.
Okay, I got Renee.
Yeah, I was, there was a discussion about how people just don't have any money to live day to day and can't afford this, can't afford that. And the things that I've thought about is what they're doing in some of the northern countries in Europe about that, where they give people a bunch of money each month. And that's also Mr. Yang's solution, I think, right? When he was running. I forgot what they call that, but a basic annual income certainly the class, that 1% and the Koch brothers, et cetera, and Bezos and all those people, if they got together, you know, and created this pool of money plus the credit, the question is, could they buy off a lot of the people that need that cash? Can they put a Band-Aid, you know, on this cancer? Can they buy off a lot of people? And I'm surprised that it hasn't been done so far. So I think the idea of trying to understand what their plans are, I think is to alleviate the situation. I think that's an important way of looking at it as well.
Right. Very true. Very true. Yeah. Basic annual income. That's what Todd was talking about, and that's what you know. That's what they that's what they do in Europe. They shut down Paris again. You know, and that's what they do. You know, they pay the people to stay home. You know, you know, whether they would consider doing that here. And I mean, that was the whole point of the stimulus. You know. To provide some level of subsistence to a sector of the destitute, you know. But what user was talking about, you know, is absolutely. And I'm sorry, I didn't put myself on stack. I should have, you know. But you know, the basic needs of the country are, and the basic needs that people are expressing are exactly that. You know, housing, water, income, healthcare. These are the things that must be addressed, you know, for the you know, for the hopefully you know, Biden campaign, you know, come November the 4th, you know, the militias. And if you read any of the stuff that they're putting out, and I read a lot of the stuff that the militias are publishing, you know, their whole perspective is that Trump is being disrespected. And that's why they want to go into the street and kill everybody. You know, if the election comes out as a point whereby Trump is not reelected, it will be because the election, number one, wasn't fair, and number two, Trump is being disrespected. And you know, and their desire, their moral desire to protect the fascist nature of the campaign is obvious and heartfelt. You know, and cannot be dismissed. And will not be dismissed. Will not be dismissed. So, Jim B.
Then give me.
And then John. Yep.
I think I was on stack too, just to let you know.
Okay, Dave. I got Jim, John, and Dave.
Put myself on stack, but I don't see it.
Okay, Luke. Luke, you haven't spoken, so I'm going to put Luke, Jim, John, and Dave.
Okay. First thing, hey, Marion, looking good. Let's see here. Oh, okay. Second, I think that as we move through this discussion today, we see things are becoming clear. For instance, the things that Todd mentioned about something we have to basically not try to impose the vision on people we're trying to organize, but we have to sort of listen, discuss, and all of that. And I think one thing that Maureen brought up that we were leaving out until she spoke is that in the present political moment, what's really driving what's foremost on the front burner is they're driven by this fear. How do we stop this fascism? How do we take this monster out? And then, of course, the main point that Wally made is that the vision is going to come from the objective reality. And we see the objective reality in terms of people trying to survive with the water question, with the way the declining value of wages and all of that. So all of these other kinds of things. So going back with the point that was Todd saying that people have maybe different visions, but there's a commonality, particularly when they have to face this fear of survival, this insecurity. And one thing, for instance, that people have a vision is that perhaps we should have a health system similar to those maybe in Denmark, right? Well, you don't have to go without. So you can come up there and then you're not imposing things. People are confronted with these things. So as we began to talk about vision, we have these vision, as Wally was saying, have a concrete basis that relates to the objective reality. But then we have to deal with the presence, and the presence in terms of politics is fear. Okay, that's my point.
All right, I got Dave and then John.
Just quickly, in terms of vision, in terms of people's imagination, I know there are short-term visions in terms of clearing that field in my neighborhood. And hopefully, if we do that, we can build and make our lives better within the system. But in terms of the long-term vision that this generation is looking at in terms of the future and what kind of world they want to build, I think they had that go along with the vision goes power. We're not going to be able to institute our vision without power. How do we get power? How do we get political power? And as Wasteland and I once discussed, what is revolution? It's a fight for the tools. Right now, they own the tools and we work for them. And they're not very good stewards of the tools or of the Mother Earth. And if we own the tools and we were stewards of the tools on the earth, we could create this world. So we can't do that without power. And power, it's a long path to get power, but that's our tactics. Our ultimate strategy, I think, and we have to get more and more power. We have to have this power to clear that lot, you know? We have to have power to get another stimulus. But ultimately, it's instead of just surviving, if we had control of those tools of society and we could decide how that was done, then we could build the world that these youth know that we can have.
I got John and then Todd.
In terms of the question of vision, I would think most of our army, and when I talk about our army, I'm talking about the exploited and oppressed that we're talking about. Most of them have a vision of heaven, and that's been instilled throughout Christianity and various and sundry things. They have that. That is not going to resolve the situation, but it is there. I think what we have here, the intelligentsia, is how do we get an understanding of the conditions that they're faced with? And basically, the subjective has always been behind the objective situation. Objective things change, but the subjective level is not there. And for most of us, I don't think any of us on this call grew up with an understanding that this society has to go. If somebody brought it to us, just like we will be bringing, and when people have to understand, I want to make this one point. My classes with most of the people that I deal with, and they're involved with Jesus and the Lord. And when I use biblical things, like when Jesus said, if you do it unto the least of thee, you do it unto me. And they amen. And I said, well, if that is the case, where would Jesus stand today with regards to the capitalist system and the worker? Oh, he's standing with the worker. And then I can go on and try to explain fundamentally that this system, what we're fighting for, housing, get rid of poverty and all, that's where the system is. But I have to show them in their own terminology where I'm going. And I'm just saying for us, we got a lot of talent here, but we have to break it so persons can understand it. I know Nick talked about being I was a union man for many years. And it's of course, the situation is vastly different now. But I'm just saying, in terms of the vision, clarification will give them an understanding and a vision of how we get out of it. Like I was saying yesterday to Mo, part of what they did to explain to people who are involved with welfare, losing their housing, the reason why they didn't go out and commit suicide or anything, because they got a deeper understanding of what's causing that situation. And I think that's where we are. Provide clarification as we move forward. And I want to emphasize this thing, the development of a political party is a step in that direction. Ain't the end all, it's a step in clarifying why we need it, because most of our constituents, basically, they have the leftover mentality of, well, we can get Trump out, we'll get Biden in, still with that, and then others who say, well, no, we ain't gonna do nothing, so I ain't gonna be bothered with it. So I'm just saying clarification is the thing that helps person see vision, clarification. And we have that understanding. And the objective situation always is beyond that as a subjective, is trying to catch up how we see it. That's all.
Okay, I got Jim B and then I got Dave.
Okay. Renee raised an interesting question in terms of where the ruling class, you know, why haven't we, they come up with a something to buy us off enough money? I think what we got going on with the ruling class, there's no question. They want to bury us working class folks, and particularly the vision we're trying to develop and get out there. They want that buried forever. What they're arguing about is what's the process by which they will bury us. And I can't get too excited about that argument because I don't have any input in it, but I certainly pay attention to it. And one last thing, I see this little note from a user. Well, you know, the people are interested in what, you know, not interested at this point. She didn't say that. In the classic, we're talking about the classics. Well, the classics of Marx and Engels and that's the scientific guide that we use for our practice. And if we depart from that, we're in trouble. That's it.
Okay, I got Dave and then Wiley.
Just quickly piggybacking on what John was saying, I've been reading about China. I've been reading Xi Jinping, the governance of China, and the Communist Party of China is constantly struggling to maintain the support of the people. That's why they had this huge anti-corruption campaign. But when they talk about their policies, when they talk about their ideas, they constantly use these sayings from Confucius, from Lao Tzu, from Chinese history that people understand, that people use in their common life. You know, everybody knows these sayings, and they've been knowing them for thousands of years. And just to piggyback on what John's saying about the Bible, so many people understand the morality of the Bible. And if you say, you know, that the least of ye, they know what that means. So I think we do have to develop a popular language with some people who may be with a Bible, with other people who may be with other sayings and the guide to their morality that they know. And that's what they're doing. And it's seen in their fight to maintain the support of the people. Under as we know, a huge barrage of the United States, the capitalist rule, want to destroy that country if they can and take it over. So it's a struggle, and it's a struggle for us to gain the confidence of the people. And I think John is right that that's a way that we have to develop, and Marilyn and Maureen, to develop confidence in us so that we're speaking the same language.
Mike, Marion's on. So let her in.
Marion's on stack?
Yeah, that's what she just called me.
She called you. Okay, go, go, Marion.
Go, Marion.
Take yourself off mute.
Okay,
go, Marion.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Hello, everybody. You know, every time this question come up, where do we go? This analysis of where do we go, we've had for a long time. And that is, you do have to start not only with the emerging section of the class, but you have to start at the bottom and take it step by step. Don't go in there like you Saul Alinsky or one of them that you know everything. You got to be participating on the front line of the fight in order to get people involved. People gonna be anti this and anti that, but they're gonna watch what you do, and they after a while they're gonna fall in line with what you do. So I think it's a step-by-step process, and you have to always be able to break down what we're what system we're talking about. We have to be able to be out there on the front line again. We have to be out, we have to be being able to answer a lot of the questions. Now, a lot of things I know I get back from folks is, didn't you tell us this? I don't know if y'all heard that. I know I've heard it, and I know Warfare Rice has heard the same thing over and over. Y'all said that, even, when the emergency manager was the order priority out here. People in Flint told us, y'all told us, you told us, and you told us. But we want to get to that level again and let them know this is what we got to expect and see and watch what's going on. And once they begin to put that 1 and 1 together, you will see them marching in line right along with us.
Thank you. Okay, Wiley.
Again, this is always a rich discussion, but sometimes I get a little discombobulated because we sometimes we raise issues which, my goodness, we should all understand, and then I criticize myself and said, no, that may not be the case. But we sometimes get caught up in the mood of the moment. And I want to just reinforce what Jim B just said, that we got to look at ourselves as scientists. At least that's the way I approach it. I try to, say to myself always that the question is a science of society. That is, that when I make a projection, an idea, it's always trying to look at things from a definite scientific perspective. And, I think sometimes we get into a discussion of wanting to reassure ourselves of things that we certainly are well grounded in and should know and should always be a cornerstone of our practice. And like the point that John made, I think that's extreme. You can't go anywhere unless you do what he said. Otherwise, you're trying to give a PhD level explanation to a person who's at the 3rd grade on the situation. That's just a cornerstone. So, and I guess it's correct that we got to constantly remind ourselves of exactly that point. On a point that I think a really very important point was raised by Renee. And I think we tend to overlook it. I think in our zeal sometimes to say that the capitalism has no maneuvering room and all of that is sometimes, a false confidence. The capitalist got a ton of maneuvering room. He's got a ton of things. He has centuries of refining and developing his technique to frustrate this movement and so forth. One of which, and as Yang put out, is, and as I think Renee definitely expressed, it's pocket change for him to buy off a large section of the working class. Look what happened in Brazil. That son of a bitch there is one of the most backward fascists on the planet. I'm talking Bolsonaro, a fool, But at the same time, by throwing out $100 to the poorest of the poor, he gets a tremendous bump in terms of his favorable rating. And that's because people who are desperate to survive actually respond positively to anybody who gives them throws them a life-saving line. And that's what this fool did. That's what he did. And he probably got it from the United States. In terms of, take this 5 or 6 billion and buy off 100 million people to buy a little more time. And that's exactly what they did with the CARES Act. That, the CARES Act, in terms of giving everybody $600 a week, shows that they have a fair amount of maneuvering room, at least in terms of the short-term thing. And we should not underestimate the capability of the capitalist to exercise that option. One last point that I wanted to make was that in terms of election again, I think it's clear to all of us that we see two things, and I want to get back to the point on this third party movement. And that in terms of the Biden campaign, we can already see the development of a new coalition, center-right coalition between the so-called moderate Republicans and the centrist Democrats. And I think that is directed against this whole movement, which is taking place in terms of the leftward drift within. I mean, the leftward, what I'm trying to say is that there's obviously, I still think we need to talk about and look at the possibility of, following selection, a split within the Democratic Party as a developing thing over the next 4 years, as an important thing, but that's for another discussion.
All right, thank you. All right, so historically, we tried to wrap up around 3:30 because we've been on for about an hour and a half. We can, unless other people have some other issues that they want to bring forward, we can try to put an agenda together, some topics for next Sunday. One of the things that Wiley brought out is the question of a split with the Democratic Party. We have talked about that. The left wing of the Democratic Party, given the pressure that's going to be brought to bear on Biden regarding the objective needs for housing, healthcare, water, food, these kinds of things will create a schism if these things are not forthcoming. Go ahead, Wiley.
Mike, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I forgot a point. I'm running my mouth off the most important thing. As I said last week, I'm doing some work on, Leah and I are doing some work on this very question, and we hope to get something to you by Tuesday. But I can't fail to mention this, that everybody should look at, and we'll try to post. There was a very important article that was put out by the Heritage Foundation. Everybody know what the Heritage Foundation is, and if you don't, you need to look it up. And the title of the article was, what was it, Leah? The looming threat of socialism in America. The looming threat of socialism in America, recently put out by the Heritage Foundation. In preparation for this next week, I urge everybody to, and we'll try to post it, but to Google that and get that article by the Heritage Foundation. And
we'll get a link on it. Brandon is saying, can you say the chat? Yeah, we say the chat minutes, Eddie, we do that. And so we will definitely download the Heritage Foundation, the looming threat of socialism in America. We'll put that up for discussion for next Sunday.
Michael,
go ahead, Renee. Go ahead.
Two things, if you could put them on the chat. One is, who's the People's Party reps in Michigan? What's the link to them, or the email?
Todd has posted a link here, and
okay.
If you go up, you'll see it, and I downloaded it. I can send it to you.
Yes, please. And then the other thing is, what was described about Central United Methodist Church. How do we participate in that? Because it sounds like somebody's doing it, but it's not being shared. I mean, I don't know anything about it. I'd like to. I'm working with people that are trying to do things before election, but this is after the election's fine. But how do we participate in that process in terms of what's going on at Central United Methodist Church? Is there a link to those folks, please?
Okay, we'll address that.
One quick point.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yes, so Learna is having an educational on October 24th, and we're going to be speaking to the issues of the time. If you go to learna-usa.com, I believe, It'll tell you all about it. There's some really experienced and comrades who have been around a while, and it'll give you our take on what moment in time we're at, and it'll be open for discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. I'll put that. I'll put the link here up on the chat. Okay, for that.
Is Waistline still on there? He's gone? What about Marion? Damn, I can't see nobody.
Okay. All right.
Is Marion still there?
We can see you.
Marion is still here. Yeah. Yes, she is. Yes, she is. Okay.
Hey, Waistline is
Okay.
not here.
Oh,
Waistline
Oh,
is
man.
not here. No.
oh,
Okay, it's 3:30. Does anyone else, do we have any other issues? So we've got Heritage Foundation, and we'll put the link up. We'll put information up about the Central Methodist March. I put the link up for the October 24th discussion webinar.
okay.
Mike, this is Carolyn.
Go ahead.
So if you all can navigate YouTube, if you go to General Baker Institute's YouTube page, you can see the latest discussion. I think it came up in two parts that we had. It was an intergenerational discussion and in coalition with International Anti-Imperialism Week that is ending probably tomorrow. So at the General Baker Institute, we had an intergenerational discussion on imperialism. And so it gives you an idea of what some young folks, what a lot of the young folks are thinking, their thought process, how they formulate things in their head, and how they respond to what's going on and how they're trying to move. But it's just one that they want to do more, and we're probably going to end up doing more. But that's like one of the things you can see that I think it was just this past Wednesday that it aired on our YouTube page.
Okay, it's GBI Facebook.
No, it's the YouTube
Oh,
page.
GBI YouTube.
General Baker
Okay.
Institute.
Okay.
Okay.
Mike,
Go ahead. Go ahead. Yep.
Mike,
Go ahead.
do we have for Tuesday, the Poor People's campaign featuring our name's Sheila Barnes, but it's unleashing the power of the poor and low income in America.
It's Shally Barnes.
Pardon?
Her name is Shally Barnes.
Kelly.
Shirley Barnes. That's going to be Tuesday. And is that up, Brandon? Is that up at 6 to 8 p.m.?
What's a Zoom?
I have the Zoom numbers here.
Okay. You gonna post it?
Well, I can.
Can you send it to all of us?
Yes, can you send it?
Mike, I'll just read them to you and you send them out, Brandon.
Okay, go ahead.
I can send them to you all.
Okay, Carolyn's gonna post it. You can post it on the chat, Carolyn.
No, I'll send it to you, Mike, and you'll send it out.
For Tuesday.
Okay. For Tuesday. Okay.
John,
Carolyn,
John, I've got it too. I will email it to you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I want all of them to have it.
I'm gonna send it to you. I don't like the rest of them as much as I like you.
Oh, that's ugly. That's ugly.
I'll send it out.
Okay.
All right. Okay, on that note, okay, we're gonna roll. It's 3:30. Okay.
All right.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, folks.
Wonderful discussion. Thank you very much. Look forward to
Get
seeing
the
the
struggle.
discussion.
Yeah.
Thank you
Talk to
very
you
much.
all.
Todd,
Talk
thank
to
you very much. Appreciate you joining us, Todd. Thank
No
you so
problem.
much.
Have a good
All right,
Take
you too.
care.
Nice. Okay.